Hello and welcome to HR Vision. Today we're going to be talking about the thorny issue of the relationship between HR directors and line managers. And today I'm delighted to be joined by Jo Hennessy, who's Director of Research at Roffey Park, and also Tanith, who's HR Director of Marks & Spencer. Welcome both of you.
Thank you. Thank you.
The debate between HR and the line is a well-worn one. HR Magazine has covered this for the last couple of years now. We've been following some of the statistics that Roffey Park has been producing, and they do make disappointing reading. So we're going to be taking some of those points on board. And I'm going to start with Jo, actually, because she's going to come right up to date with some of the latest research I think you're just about to publish now. Just give me a flavour, really, of why there is this sort of antagonism between the line and HR, and is it really improving?
Well, the results from the Management Today, which is our annual survey of managers, suggest that there still is some divide. We asked them around how influential, credible HR are and whether they add value to the business. And the answer there is okay, well over 50%, knocking on 60% at times would say yes to those questions. I guess the concerning answer is around the question of whether HR are in touch or not. And 40% of line managers would say that they are not in touch with their issues.
Okay. Why do you think line managers feel removed from the HR director?
Well, I suppose some of our research where we've actually spoken with line managers would suggest that right at the top of the organisation there isn't a divide. It's lower down that it can feel a bit more remote.
Now, is that because line managers just feel completely heaped with work? I mean, according to some of your stats from a couple of years ago, line managers, between a third and half of line managers just think that HR put too much work their way. Is that a fair point, do you think?
Well, I don't think we could make a blanket comment that that's the case across all organisations. But there are organisations where there has been insufficient communication, and whilst line managers could perhaps be convinced to take on more responsibilities, to do more of their own HR, the issue is that they feel that they haven't been trained to do it and no one's talked to them about why this is happening. Yeah. For us, it's an issue of organisational change. If HR were to manage the transition of responsibilities to the line as a change project, then I think you'd get much more buy-in from the line.
Let's just take that to the sort of Marks & Spencer picture. How are you trying to encourage more communication between your HR people at the top, I guess, and your sort of population of line managers, which actually are sort of quite geographically spread, aren't they, around the country?
Absolutely. I think we've done it in a number of ways. The model that we operate is we do have what we call HR business partners, and fundamentally believe that they have to be aligned with what the business is doing in terms of driving the strategy and then looking at the people implications of that. And our HR business partners work very, very closely with the line managers. They will sit on the boards of those areas. So if you take general merchandise, for example, the HR business partner there will sit alongside that senior team when they have their weekly, monthly meetings and will contribute. And I think that's where it starts, and being able to demonstrate that in that contribution, one, they really understand the business. And I think that's key. You've got to be able to understand the business, understand the customer, and be able to contribute. So you are a business person, general manager first, but focusing on the people implications. And then secondly, we have centres of excellence that will provide expertise in certain areas that the HR business partners will draw on.
Is a business partner just a sort of bridge then between HR and the line, or is it something more strategic than that?
My experience is it's more strategic than that. And where we've seen it work very well is we will have individuals who are an expert in their field, whether that's senior executive remuneration or employee relations or talent management, and will work very closely in partnership with the HR business partner. So for the line manager, it's seamless. They don't really care where they're getting the advice and the expertise from. They just want one point of call. They don't want to be talking to different people in a function depending on what it is they want.
Sure.
And being able to demonstrate, and I think this is the key here, is being able to demonstrate that what we are doing is value added and there's a return on the investment. So making it as commercial as you can whenever you're presenting your case or why things need to be different or your input, that it's linked to the results of the business as opposed to this is a new HR idea that's
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, often the comment is sort of what's in it for me. I mean, are there trust issues that you think are very important here? Because the line manager needs to feel that there's a return for them. I mean, it makes their job better to sort of do some of the things that are being pushed their way. Is that a common
I think
thought?
it depends on how good the platforms are that are set up. I'm sure you find this, because a lot of it works on whether or not your shared services systems work well, whether there are ways of logging the inquiries, and whether the intranet really does have the information easily available and findable for the line managers. And particularly, I say this more within technical organisations, but they rather like the techie side of going on and doing it themselves. So it can become a reasonably popular way of working. The reason when it doesn't is when those systems don't work. They ring and speak to the shared services centre, they lose their original inquiry, no one gets back to them, or the individuals at the shared service centres haven't been sufficiently trained to answer the question. And for me, shared service centre and the intranet is like getting the pitch level. Until you get the pitch level, you can't stop playing the game.
Okay, we won't go into the offside rule there, but Tanith,
Please don't.
You're definitely doing some work here on the engagement side, because that's an area that you think the line managers can really take a responsibility in, and you're trying to explain to them, aren't you, the sort of real benefit of taking responsibility for their sort of HR.
Absolutely. We did quite a bit of work looking at what really does engage employees at work. And based on some external research, there's a lot of evidence that show the three biggest predictors are opportunity and well-being. That's giving people the opportunity to develop, but also working for an organisation that they feel cares about their well-being. Secondly, working for an organisation where they have a sense of pride, they feel passionate about the business they work in. And thirdly, picking up your point about trust was seen as the third biggest predictor in the sense of feeling that they are trusted to do their job, and also they work for an organisation is trusted. And I think that's becoming an increasing challenge for businesses on the back of what happened to the banking sector, what's happened to politicians. So we've developed in a holistic way a whole number of initiatives to really demonstrate that these are three elements that are really key for us in a business. And we also run an employee engagement survey to measure that. So we measure trust in the organisation, and absolutely affected the bottom line. It's not just a nice thing to do to create a great environment. We were able to demonstrate using our employee engagement scores vis-a-vis the sales performance of a store, the mystery shopper scores of a store, and also the absenteeism levels in a store, that where you had more engaged employees, there was a direct and significant correlation with those three measures.
And will that directly affect their own bonuses? I mean, each manager of a store?
Ultimately, yes.
So there is a sort of a payoff for them, I guess.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, your point about what's in it for me.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I guess line managers shouldn't really be looking at the financial side. They should just be doing it because it's the right thing to do for their immediate staff below them. So what can HR, I guess, do to help those line managers who may not have a sort of financial imperative to do this?
Well, I guess the idea there would be to equip them with some of the skills that I think bring humanity into working practices, giving job discretion to one's team, involving and consulting them around decisions that affect them. It's very simple stuff. These are subtleties that not everyone has at their fingertips, and they can be quite easily learned. And so the other point I wanted to make was that some of these practices around engagement can usefully be used by HR itself when engaging line managers around changes of practice in the HR arena.
Okay. Do you think, finally, I mean, line managers just have to accept they're going to have to take on a certain amount of HR responsibility now, and there shouldn't be this sort of fighting between the two of them? If they just got on and sort of accepted that, things would be a lot better.
I think the most important shift here is this is a partnership, that as a business head or somebody in the HR function, you have the same common goal, which is how do you optimise the success of an organisation through people. I think what HR provide is some insight, support, opportunities, but your really, really effective, best line managers will do it regardless of the input from the HR function.
Sure. I mean, are line managers just frustrated HR people, or vice versa? I don't know.
Well, they haven't chosen to go into HR,
exactly.
but they have chosen to go into management that brings its responsibilities. And, I'm firmly of a belief that managers enjoy being with their people and seeing their people succeed, but they may not always be as skilled at doing it as they need to be.
So looking out for 2011 then, is the remoteness more of an idea than a reality? Is that remoteness closing?
I think in some organisations it is a reality, and therefore there's some imperative for some HR professionals to get much closer to the business, to understand and talk their language, to advertise the benefits of an initiative in business language, not in HR speak. So there is still room for movement.
Yes. Does that echo?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it's unfortunate. It varies considerably. I think it varies across geography, I think it varies internationally, and I think it varies based on what the CEO expects from HR and how they position the people agenda.
Do you think it's just line managers having a bit of a moan? I mean, is it genuine? It's a genuine feeling that they feel isolated from HR?
Well, I guess, maybe some managers enjoy having an HR bash. But when we did our interviews, we felt as if the people we spoke to genuinely wanted HR business partnering in their organisations to work better. They were frustrated that HR didn't directly come to them and involve them and ask them, and they felt done too. So I think in their defence, at times it can be a little bit dictated, and those things we talked about earlier around engagement are just not put into practice. There's just not enough dialogue lower down the ranks.
Well, I think we covered some really interesting ground there. You can carry on reading about this at hrmagazine.co.uk or in the next issue of HR Magazine. All that remains for me to do is to thank our panellists, thank you, and thank you very much for watching us. Goodbye.